Another action-filled week. Hello and welcome to Editors Forum. We have all the interesting perspective for you, plus the bloody widow conversation.
Be here to witness this one.
The minority walking out of the chamber during the swearing-in of the MP-elect for Ayawaso West Wogon marched to the police headquarters in solidarity with the Ningo Pram MP Sam George to write his statement on the incident. That certainly did not go down well with the first Speaker of Parliament, Joseph Osewusu, and this is his response.
Honourable Member for Tamale North. Honourable, can you leave the House?
Member of Parliament for Tamale North, Al-Hassan Suyini, being ordered to leave the floor of Parliament, the first Deputy Speaker demanded apology for the bloody widow inscription, but the minority insisted they were not going to apologize. The result? The Speaker has ordered for the minority MPs involved to be identified and made to face the Privileges Committee of Parliament. The matter did not end there. The Inter-Party Coalition for National Sovereignty protesting against the Ayawaso West Wogon by-election violence, calling for the head of the National Security Minister, the Minister of State in charge of security, and the IGP over their involvement in the violence. Well, there has been a three-member committee of inquiry, commission of inquiry, and which has since been inaugurated to look into the matter and submit its recommendations within a month. Amidst warnings, the commission may not lead to the prosecution of those found culpable.
President of the Republic has established a commission of inquiry. The IGP, an appointee of the President of the Republic, is also carrying out some investigation. What is the meaning of that? With the greatest respect, this question of commission of inquiry is a non-starter.
Ken, in Parliament, we saw how the minority members showed inscriptions of bloody widow. We also saw how the first Deputy Speaker was angry and finally asked MP for Tamale not to walk out of the chamber and all of that. Would you agree with people who describe this as a very bad spectacle for a very respectable institution like Parliament?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say a very good evening to you. I don't know whether you are aware, but it was quite bright when I was...
When I see the Commission of Inquiry and I saw the individuals, I was happy. But then when I look at the container, the Commission of Inquiry itself,
as prescribed by the Constitution,
then I get worried. Obviously, we are not going to see prosecutions to punish people.
So you don't see that happening here?
I honestly don't see that happening after the commission.
But government disagrees.
First, the potential criminal investigation is not lost because of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. Indeed, if you look at the terms of reference, it also includes getting the facts and a body of evidence and identifying the persons responsible for it and proffering sanctions. So that is not lost.
The NDC describes the Emil Short Commission as a non-starter on the basis of its composition, obvious political coloring, and the president's own track record.
The commission is a fake commission. Mark my words and watch my lips. It is a fake commission that has not been established according to the laws of this country.
The big question, is 2020 elections under threat?
So we agree vigilantism now is a threat. We agree its potential impact. Now this Ayawaso West Wogon hit us badly. But you know what? For those who refuse to understand the psychology of violence and what it has the potential and the capacity to do, this could be nothing compared to what could still happen.
Will the Commission of Inquiry heal all our wounds going into 2020?
So we are just dancing around the pot. Because look, let there be a by-election in another 2 weeks, we will see violence 3 times.
Will there ever be elections in this country free from political vigilantism? These are issues we will be critically analyzing from the editor's point of view when the conversation takes full swing. We are live on digital address GA09925539, on facebook.com/joynewsontv, on Twitter @joynewsontv, on YouTube and across the world on myjoyonline.com. You can also join the conversation via 0266 047417 on WhatsApp. Take a break, we'll be back. My guest in the studio, Ken Crunchy, is publisher Daily Searchlight. Kobe Fiagbe is managing editor of the Ghanaian Lens, and Evans Mensah is editor and head of political desk at Joy News. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Good to see you, Aisha.
Let me start with you, Ken. My week has been action-packed, and maybe I can say same for Evans, because I've been doing a lot of stuff with him in the office. But how has the week been for you?
Oh, it has been hectic, business and work. So it has been busy, and the politics. It's been quite interesting following events in the media.
Yeah. Kobe, has it been same for you?
Well, we've been alive and making things happen, so that's all.
Well, that's great. Now, I think that before we go into the discussion, let's see what transpired in Parliament this week.
May I now invite the Honourable Member-elect to be conducted into the chamber for administration of the oaths. Cannot be here to witness this swearing. Yes, Honourable Deputy Leader.
As the majority in this House, and in the absence of the majority leader, the leader of government business, Mr. Speaker, we would not be perturbed by the absence of the other side.
Ken, in Parliament, we saw how the minority members showed inscriptions of Bloody Widow. We also saw how the First Deputy Speaker was angry and finally asked MP for Tamale not to walk out of the chamber and all of that. Would you agree with people who describe this as a very bad spectacle for a very respectable institution like Parliament?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say a very good evening to you. I don't know whether you are aware, but it was quite bright when I was coming here. It was a clear day, clear evening, and there was an accident at the junction, just at the junction there. And I wonder why and how 2 people driving very, very low-performing cars, those cars look like low-performing vehicles, at the traffic light can just go and have a head-on collision the way they do. People should be careful when they get onto the road. It's a Sunday evening. Nobody is expecting you to come to the hospital with injuries from road accident. People should just behave responsibly when they get behind steering wheels. Okay. But, respect is something that is earned. So if you use the expression that this is a respectable house, it is not because the building that is there is respectable. It's because the content, or what is supposed to be the content of that particular house is done according to certain standards and parameters that leads to respectability. It is supposed to be the second most significant political organization in Ghana after the executive comes the legislature, and also before you go to the judiciary. Some of the things that have been taking place there, for me, begs the question whether your description of the legislature or the House of Parliament as being a respectable house is really it's an accurate description of the house. First and foremost, I would take you a little back, not from events that took place in that particular house. But events preceding, and that is supposed to be the reason for what happened in the house. And I'm making specific reference to the day of the Ayawaso West, whatever, walk-on violence. And some of the statements and claims that came forth early in the morning about people being shot 5 times, yes, and certain number of people having died, that sort of thing, that were later recanted and brought back. I think that if anything had happened in that country, in this country, on that morning, the claims by Mr. Sam George, and so far I've not heard anybody really taking him on, that he had been shot, that some people were dead, and all manner of claims. I watched the tape, and I'm not legitimizing the work, the attack on him by those people. I'm not legitimizing it. But if I were to see a pickup, because you see, in 2016, I was at a polling station called Ajaba at La Paz, at Chimota, where I live. I had just gone to stand by and observe the voting, when a group of men in the similar vehicle, is the SWAT vehicle they were using, that one was a military version of that vehicle, and they had their faces covered, came to the polling station, and the way they beat up people and mishandled people. So I don't think that people coming to polling stations with their covered faces is a new phenomenon in our country. Now, if I see men like that, my natural inclination is to stand back.
Okay.
If possible, I'm coming. If possible, observe. If you go and you poke your hand.
But in that video, we just couldn't hear the conversation that resulted into the beatings. All we heard was someone saying that this is the beginning of 2020, wallahi, or something like that. But we did not hear the exchanges that went between
I've seen the video of Mr. Sam George rushing towards those people, pointing fingers.
But did you hear what he said?
And
we also do not know what led to him going to them and pointing fingers.
That is why I gave the lengthy background.
Okay.
That when I see men like that, I'm cautious.
Okay.
No matter my
But
position.
should men like that be seen at places where you should just go
we'll get to all those points. We'll get to all those points. I'm saying that
you're just going there as a citizen and you have that right to be there. Should you see some of these men? We are not in a war-torn country.
No, I agree with you, and I'll get to all those points. The point I'm making is that when you meet people like that, you ought to be cautious. And how he had conducted himself that day, that morning, should raise very serious questions about how all of us act. Because if
my struggle to understand this kind of description you're giving is that both of us did not hear what started the violence.
No,
what we saw in that video was Sam George pointing at those people and those people retaliating with beatings.
At least you saw the
so
pointing.
We can't conclude that
he
is the one who started
but I've laid a wider premise.
Right.
That the claims the gentleman made that morning were claims that any responsible person should not make.
Okay.
I don't think Kobe, when he has not seen dead bodies, when he has not been shot, will go on radio and say he has been shot. It could have like he was elected by people.
But there were a lot of people who were shot. The hospital confirmed.
No, but he had not been shot.
Okay.
Sam George had not been shot.
Yes, himself was not shot.
That's the point I'm making.
Right.
That when you, publicly, the politician who has followers, go on air and say that I have been shot, people are dead, all that sort of thing. When you know it's a blatant lie. Okay. Now, it is based on the actions of that day that we then come to Parliament.
Yeah.
And our MPs are saying that in defense of whatever attack was mounted on Sam George, and I will stipulate that there was some type of attack on Sam George. In defense of whatever attack that took place against Sam George, they then decide that they are going to describe this lady who has just lost her husband. This lady who had gone through a very grueling electoral experience. They are going to describe her as a black widow. They are going to boycott her swearing in. And in my opinion, all manner of misbehavior, which really ought not to have been the case. Look, the attack took place, was it a Thursday? It was a Thursday.
Yes, it was a Thursday.
He could have gone to the police station, and that is what any responsible person should do. Walk straight to the police station and say, I've been attacked.
But he did that on Tuesday.
Why? You could have gone on Thursday, and that's what I'm saying.
On that day, you may not know what he was going through after taking those slaps.
What he was doing, what he set out to do was lie to the people, make all manner of wild and irresponsible claims, then went and sat somewhere from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, another working day, and then he goes to Parliament. And then when the lady, because what I can see is that what is basically taking place is political grandstanding.
Okay.
It's political grandstanding. This thing took place, and we are going to wait until the most political opportunity and see whether we can pay back. Okay. And that is what, for me, it is not acceptable. Okay. What he should have done right after the attack, if he had been attacked, was walk to the police station and said, oh, I've been beaten by some men here. I've been shot 5 times by some men here. I saw them kill 10 people. Okay, and then we start to begin to take evidence. He doesn't do that. He goes back home, takes a bath, sits in his air-conditioned car, goes back home, takes a bath, relaxes over the weekend, asks Monday to boot, and comes back to Parliament. And they are waiting for the poll.
We cannot independently confirm that he actually went to relax because, yes, and like the point I made earlier,
he didn't sleep.
Yeah, he slept, but if he had, he was traumatized by the beating, you see, probably he was going through some health checks or trying to recover from that. But let me also engage.
When precious people like you, precious people, are forced, because of some of these antics, to come and use airtime to discuss some of these things. Because, you see, he had the opportunity on Thursday.
Okay, but he didn't go. Kobe, what's your own assessment of what we witnessed in Parliament this week? The minority says we will not take part of the swearing in of the MP elect because we don't even recognize the election. They describe it as, shrouded with fraud. And they also say that the lady is a bloody widow. That's their description of her. Now, the first deputy speaker says, you must apologize. And they say you will not get any apology from us. And then he now asked a member of the, and if you look at what happened, the members were even telling their leaders that, look, if you don't know and you apologize, you would see what, you would have us to contend with. All these issues happened within a week. How do you assess this? What's your own assessment of this?
Aisha, good evening to our viewers and good evening to you and my brothers here. First of all, before I go to your question, there is a world of difference between being shot at and being shot. So my brother Ken should just be charitable to our brother who has suffered that trauma and who was narrating his audio and said that he had been shot at. Being shot at is not the same as being shot. And what he said was that he was shot at. Okay. Thankfully, he had not sustained any injuries because the bullets hadn't touched him. But it doesn't mean that he had not been shot at. Okay. So to try and make a mockery of him saying that he had been shot at and say that because he has not sustained any injury from bullet wounds, therefore he had not been shot at, is begging the question, seriously. So that's the first distinction we need to make. Now, like him, I'll also go back. What happened? A by-election was supposed to take place. And I've heard all kinds of things about by-elections have always been characterized with one kind of violence or the other and all that. But seriously, what is raising knuckles this time around is not the fact that there had been violence. It's about the fact that there has been state-sponsored violence. The violence unleashed was not a matter of just some MPP hoodlums who have gathered or NDC hoodlums who have gathered and thought that they want to show each other that they are capable of, which is in itself condemnable. It's not something that must be countenanced. But this one went beyond that. We have people who were dressed in outfits that we have been told are National Security Council handed out outfit. Meanwhile, there is nowhere in any legislation whatsoever that National Security Council is supposed to have a standing force. Well, I'm a novice, I'm not a lawyer, but my layman's reading of the laws does not show me anywhere where there is anything that says that National Security Council has to have a standing force.
It's supposed to be a coordinating outfit.
Well, I'm glad you are corroborating my point. Second, we have police officers who have been deployed by the states as the frontline security for the elections, disowning those people and saying they don't know even where they are coming from. Yet, these were people who were armed to the teeth, better armed than the police on the ground, and even being served by the police. We saw one of them whose weapon, was a weapon or mobile phone, fell, and the policeman had to pick it for him and hand it over. So then you ask yourself, in all this, where is all this coming from? And that is where the angst is coming from. That's where the anxiety is coming from. I'm not saying that engagement of hoodlums but at least then we know that these are things that we can look at the political level. But this is more like a state-sponsored event. And this is what we're talking about.
Even at the political level, I don't think it's acceptable.
That is what I'm saying. I started off by saying that it is not acceptable. But even that, we know where to leave the blame at the political leadership's doorsteps. But now, we are taking it to the state level. It is not MPP any longer. It is the state of Ghana, represented by our National Security Council, chaired by our president and the vice president. So you see how serious this whole thing is.
So did that warrant what transpired?
I'm coming. So when all this bloodshed and things have gone on, and the major opposition party in the election, before 12 noon, walks out of the election and says that, look, we are not going to be part of this election. It follows that they are definitely not going to recognize anybody who is an outcome or who comes out of that election. No two ways about it. It's just a given.
But was it ideal to pull out of the election?
I think so. I believe strongly that it was the right thing to do, because this is just a by-election. And a by-election at which before 12 o'clock somebody had been shot, whether dead or not, is immaterial. Gunshots is being fired, whether people have been injured or not, is immaterial. Intimidation is fully out. And the effect of the intimidation in that by-election is seen in the final result, at which we have only 19%, less than 20% turnout.
For the votes.
Less than 20. This is the historic. It's never happened in this country. Yes, by-elections tend to have low figures. No two ways about that one. It is a fact. The records. But never have we seen a by-election at which less than 20% of all registered voters turn out. Never.
And so it warranted that description of the outcome as a bloody widow.
This is a manifestation of what took place. Now, taking all this into account, the people come to Parliament and said, look, what happened was so bloody. And we can't accept this as the norm. Indeed, that is why we even, as a political party, walked out, boycotted the elections. So we can't be part of the swearing in of a product of that bloody by-election. And that is it. So, really, people make the point that it's the use of the word widow that was problematic. I'm even ready to concede that. But at the end of the day, the fact remains that this was one bloody by-election.
So for you, it was justifiable to describe the MP-elect as bloody widow?
Maybe not as a widow, but bloody MP or product of a bloody election, yes.
Okay, but Evans, you have been engaging both sides of the political divide. And of course, if you remember, remember the first Deputy Speaker, after he asked for the apology and he didn't get one, he then ordered that the clerk should play the video, identify all the minority MPs who took part in the Bloody Widow thing, so that they will be hauled before the Privileges Committee. I also heard you speaking with the ranking member for Defense and Interior Committee, James Agalga, and I saw some U-turn being made by the MP who says that, okay, so she's not even a widow, so we made a mistake of describing her as a widow, because if you look at the biography of the dead MP, her name wasn't there as a widow. I mean, what's your appreciation of, I mean, the turn of events this week?
I mean, so for me, the minority guys had a justification, they believed, to protest on the back of the Ayawaso West Wogon by-election violence. However, and nobody really will quarrel with them for protesting and boycotting the sitting and walking out of the House, because it's part of parliamentary procedure. When you are upset about something, you walk out, you hold placards, which has been a tradition the MPP in opposition had done same many times. When the president had come there to read the State of the Nation or the budget,
they do it.
You know, so I don't have a problem with the protest, but everybody agree that the statement on the placard that they had was a problem in terms of the description of the lady as a bloody widow. Was a problem, and in truth, some of the minority leaders themselves agree that, you know, on hindsight, that could have been taken out of the equation. Because I remember last week, the minority chief with Muntaka Mubarak was asked whether he said he himself didn't hold the placard up, and I also listened to the deputy minority leader James Kuchaveji, who also said the same thing, that he also didn't hold the placard up, and it begs the question. Was this a coordinated protest from the leadership point of view, or backbenchers had taken this upon themselves and foisted it and imposed it on the rest of the minority group? Yeah. It appears that the latter is the case, because if you listen to the minority guys, leaders, both Muntaka Mubarak and you also listen to James Kuchaveji, both of them did not hold out a placard. But what will happen if they might, and remember, Harun Idris is out of the country. So these two are the individuals who will lead the minority in such an instance. And in fact, when you watch the march they did from Parliament to the IGP, to the IGP, that's the police headquarters, it was led by these two individuals I'm talking about. But when it came to that parliamentary protest, in terms of hoisting the placard, they themselves did not participate. And so that raises questions. And I get the sense from speaking to my parliamentary correspondent that there was a push from the backbenchers who were upset thoroughly with the way the leadership, their leaders, were handling this. They wanted a more frontal, you know, approach to this, and they felt that they should do something dramatic to register their protest, which led to the Bloody Widow placard. So my reading of that is the minority had, and I'm going to use two examples. In this case, the minority seemed to have public opinion on their side until they did the Bloody Widow thing. Most people had condemned the Ayawaso West Wogon by-elections and seriously condemned government's handling of it in terms of Brian Champon's admission that he sent the people there. So government and the MPP were under pressure. All the NDC needed to do was to ride that crest of opposition against the NPP and simply just exploit it by being classy. They lost the classy bit. They were not refined in their approach. And therefore, you realize that after the Bloody Widow bit, attention then focused on them. Criticism then came on them, you know, which was totally needless. It shifted a bit of the pressure from the NPP to the NDC, which was unnecessary. And you notice that the NPP then took advantage and they sent their MP to go and visit the guys who were wounded and gave them money. And then that again put additional pressure, because then it came up as if the picture was portrayed as if, oh, the NDC guys
were just
who went there, who were
not
talking,
even thinking of settling the
bills of the
and all
people.
of that.
And then the next day we got you know, feedback coming that, oh, they apparently when John Mahama went there, he gave money, etc. But that wasn't played up. The NPP guys played it.
Yeah, but we didn't have to play it.
But I get your point they were making. But you know, this is politics.
No.
I get his point.
The point is that he didn't have to.
I get the point you're making.
Advertise the fact that
no problem.
He's gone there and he's giving money. No,
in fact, but you know, of the points that the family members of one of the spoke about.
Yes, he did.
Yes, Mahama went there. Mahama went there. Okay, so
he didn't have to.
Let Evans make it.
So it was all about public image.
Let Evans make it.
Yes, of course.
Oh wow! No. For John Mahama, from John Mahama, it was not about public imagery.
Yeah.
Taking the moral
it was not about public imagery. No, it was not. It's about human lives.
Yeah.
You understand? It's about human lives. It's not about imagery. It's not about making an image out of this.
Let Evans land and then
that's corrected. He can continue.
So yeah, I mean, for me, I looked at that. I'm like, the NDC, you had everything going for you. That bloody widow thing, he's admitted that a bloody widow thing could have been taken out. But when that was introduced, you gave the MPP a sniff.
I'm not talking about the bloody widow. I'm talking about the widow aspect.
That's it. But that's the point I'm making.
But the bloody part remains
you could have used bloody MP and nobody would have. The civil society.
I agree.
That's the point
I'm making. But the bloody part remains very, very constant.
There's a second example of the NDC somehow being slightly overzealous and giving the MPP breathing space when they didn't deserve it. Again, on the wake of the Ayawaso violence, everybody was criticizing government, the president,
especially after the Brian Champa came to admit that he deployed.
And then all of a sudden, we heard John Mahama saying that, oh, we have a revolutionary past, we'll match you good for good. And then right then, they shifted a bit of attention from the MPP onto themselves. And then people then started criticizing that as well, which was unnecessary as well.
But you see, if he had again, people focused on one aspect of the conversation. John Mahama made the point that the NDC, in spite of all that background, is the one that midwifed this constitution and has always been first to respect the constitution.
But you also said that when it comes to violence, nobody can dish out violence than you can.
He made the point that being the case, that is why the NDC is very docile. But then people should not take that docility to mean that an inability to hit back. So if you hit me, I will hit you. But if you don't want me to hit back, don't hit me. What it means is that what it means is that you don't want to hit, don't hit me.
He may be right, but the criticism is coming on the back of the fact that
when people focus on
ex-president, don't forget the caliber of person he is.
But the fact that he's an ex-president does not preclude him from recognizing the facts of history. Does not preclude him from recognizing the fact that the NDC came from a past that has not been very palatable. Yes, whatever you want to call it. In fact, indeed, it's a historical fact that in this country, we established a truth committee. What is the name of that commission? National Reconciliation Commission, in recognition of that fact. So those are historical facts. You understand? And he is recognizing that historical fact by saying that, notwithstanding that historical fact, this is what we have become over the years, and we intend to stay that. But please don't take our leniency for weakness. Yes, absolutely.
My point is that you see, so we are now in the situation where people have to explain.
No, nobody has to explain unless you decide not to listen to the whole thing and appreciate it.
So my point is,
I'm not to take from you, but I think Elvis should be allowed to.
So my bigger point, because this is editors forum, my bigger point is that in politics, when you have the wind in your sail, I don't think that you should say stuff.
Don't go and say boot for boot.
Yeah, that will take focus away.
Well, you can say all that be die.
But you see, the way you guys utilize all that to your advantage.
No, you see,
you utilize it so effectively. In 2012, most people point to all that as one of those things that Nanado couldn't shake off.
You see,
but here you are. You've played into the MPP hand.
My problem is not my bringing all that is not about equalization or anything, because the two are not the same at all. this is all that be done on its own. He say this is a man saying that we are going to an election with an all that be done, and this is another one. They say that don't provoke me. Don't provoke me. Don't provoke me. If you do, you will get a response. Okay. So there are two totally different things.
Goes back to violence begets violence.
No, there are two totally different things together. Now, my point is this: John Mahama was speaking to the nation. Forget about whether he was NDC delegate, because he knows he's being recorded and he's going to go out there. Yeah. He was speaking to the nation. Yeah. And he took pains to recount the historical antecedents of the party.
I think you've explained that. I think we should.
And so that must not be lost. That must not be lost. When you want to criticize him based on the whole, not on just an aspect of what he said.
Statement.
You understand? Okay. He said that this is where we are coming from, but this over the years is who we have become, and having become this, please don't force us into this situation, because if you do, you may not like what's going to come back. And so why are people not ready to listen to what he's saying and say he's playing to the on the violence? No, he's not. He's not provoking violence at all.
So that point has been made, and it's quite clear the intention of ex-President Mahama, that he wasn't actually asking for people to go and fight, but he was just sending a caution. Now, as if the showdown in Parliament wasn't enough, on Thursday we also saw something. Let's take a look.
The last effort they made was to rush the announcement of a commission of inquiry last night. I'm sure you've heard our response. I want to repeat our response. That commission is a fake commission. Mark my words and watch my lips. It is a fake commission that has not been established according to the laws of this country.
So first, the potential criminal investigation is not lost because of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. Indeed, if you look at the terms of reference, it also includes getting the facts and a body of evidence and identifying the persons responsible for it and proffering sanctions. So that is not lost. Now, specific to the argument that a Commission of Inquiry may necessarily stop prosecutions, I encourage you to read the Republic versus, I think it's Charles Rekubobe and Kojom Pieni, the ruling of Justice Mafusa at the time. And there's quite a clear distinction as to why in that instance it happened. If in the constitutional instrument you have given people immunity from prosecution, then you will be stopped from going further to prosecute them. If you have a scenario where evidence is gathered by stripping people of all their legal rights, as in compelling people, stripping them of their representation and their rights, and you just seek to dump the report of that commission in a court for prosecution, you'll be found wanting there. But I think the ruling of the courts are quite clear as to what other avenues there are to put together a decent docket, even when you've had a commission of inquiry. So I do not share that view in this instance. I think the proponents of that argument are grossly misinformed on the law. They are grossly misinformed on the fact, because the law does not support that view. If you look at the Supreme Court ruling of 2012, the courts are quite clear that there are two types of instruments. There are those that are of the nature of rules and regulations. Those are the ones that you lay in Parliament to mature for 21 days. And the ruling was by Justice Databa, and I encourage you to refer to it and educate your viewers and your listeners. Those are the ones that you refer to Parliament for 21 days. If you have one that is in the nature of an executive instrument, you do not require. Indeed, if you check from the previous commissions of inquiry, you can check and validate whether it was laid in Parliament for 21 days before it assumed legality. So the law does not support that argument. The fact also does not support that argument, because the constitutional instrument was dated the 6th of February 2019. It was issued by the command of the President under the signature of His Excellency the Vice President and gazetted accordingly. So perhaps those who are making that argument are not privy to that fact. And you need to help them to be privy to that fact so that we don't misinform the public.
So you had there, and before the demonstration on Thursday, you saw that a commission of inquiry, a 3-member commission of inquiry, was set up by the president, the vice president, and that the orders of the president to look into the matter. Now, that has also received mixed reactions over the week. But my issue is the NDC that called for a probe into this matter. They should be jumping over this commission of inquiry, Kobe. I mean, but why are they still saying that they don't even have any confidence in this commission of inquiry?
I like that. I like the way you put the question. But you see, there are two things. There is a commission of inquiry that is fact-finding to give us, how do you call it, knowledge to formulate policy, okay? And there is an investigation to do criminal investigation, to bring justice to the victims, and to serve as a, how do you call it, a deterrent to others. I have heard people say over the years, or over and over, that look, we have had violence at all by-elections, so we have all, and nobody has ever been prosecuted. And I say, yes, it is true. Perhaps that is why we continue to have it. But if we are to have prosecution and people will be held accountable and they know that, look, whoever sent me, whoever I thought is my godfather, whoever I thought is the authority today, who sent me to go and misbehave, when I am in the cooler, I'm going to be there alone. My wife and kids are going to be out there and nobody will be caring for them. And so when somebody is sending somebody tomorrow, that person will be mindful. Okay. Then that is a deterrent, how do you call it? Deterrence enough. Okay. But if we continue to use all manner of shenanigans to cover it up and let people go scot-free, then people know that once we are in government and I'm acting on orders of people in authority like Brian Champon and co, whatever happens, the system will find a way of protecting me and using all manner of legal schemes and shenanigans to cover me. And that is what we are talking about.
But looking at the membership of the commission.
I don't have any qualms whatsoever about establishing a commission of inquiry to find out the legal status of the force that was deployed by the so-called National Security Council. Okay. By the National Security Minister responsible for national security. I don't have any qualms whatsoever at all. So long as, but when it comes to the actual criminality, the assault and things, I think that that is squarely the remit of the Ghana Police Service. And I think that this matter, if the commission of inquiry is to establish on what basis the National Security Council established a standing force, under what legal authority, is it properly constituted and all that, do they even have a role to play in an election and all that?
Why not?
Those matters can well be looked into, and those matters are matters for policy.
But if you look at the terms of reference of this commission, they are supposed to look into events that led into the violence.
That is where I'm coming. Those whole things, that is why, that is a blanket thing that ropes everything else into it, and therefore at the end of the day, nobody will get prosecuted. You know why? Because once the commission comes out with this finding, the commission's finding is such that it is a high court, how do you call it, ruling. So an aggrieved person, after how many months? Is it 6 months? Can go to court but not before 6 months. After 6 months, you can go to court to appeal it and all that. And all that, we all know what happens in this country. That's the end of the story.
Maybe this is a different one.
This is looking not a different story. So the point is this. The point is this. At the end of the day, what should happen is that the police must be encouraged to continue with the investigation. The National Security Minister must give us the names of the people that he deployed on that day, and the marksmen, identify those marksmen to the names that he has given us, so that we can identify them and hold them to account.
So what was the minority calling for when they asked for a bipartisan probe?
When they asked for a bipartisan probe, it was not a commission of inquiry. You don't get it.
Okay.
The authority of a bipartisan probe is not the same as the commission of inquiry as established by the, how do you call it, by the vice president on the orders of the president.
Okay.
As we are told on the orders of the president. You understand? So they are not the same thing at all. But this one is clearly an attempt to just let people, at the end of the day, a certain report will come out. That report would, after 6 months, be challenged in court, and then we will be going up and down, and justice will not be served. When justice can better be served by, first of all, calling the minister of and minister responsible for national security, who has owned up to the men, who has said that he is the one who deployed them, and therefore is in position to identify the masked men. Lead him to identify each one of us, then we hold each one of them for the brutality that they meted out on that day, and then charge them for court. That is what we are talking about.
So the commission of inquiry is needless here.
You don't get it. I have already said that to the extent that this commission of inquiry is to establish the legal framework for establishing of the force. The legal framework, if even it needs to be in existence on all those things, those has nothing to do with criminality. Those are policy issues. To that extent that they are going to find out those things and inform us, oh yes, we think that national security is right in establishing a standing force, and we think that the law permits them to do that. To that extent, we let them do that investigation inquiry for us.
I think we should get the term of reference clear here. It says, A, to make a full, faithful and impartial inquiry into the circumstances of and establish the facts leading to the events and associated violence during the Ayawaso West.
That is why I'm telling you that. That is why I'm telling you that terms of reference in itself is what is the problem. That terms of reference are things that the police are already doing. Okay. Yes, the police may have been caught wrong-footed in this whole matter from the beginning, but I believe strongly, having served in uniform before, that if our police decide to be very professional, they can be very, very professional.
Okay, so
you understand?
We should have allowed the police to continue with investigations.
Yes, and when we are setting up this commission, this commission can look into matters of policy, not of the facts of the criminality.
Okay.
The criminality is a matter before the police CID.
So we should have allowed the police to do that. Well, we've been told that there is nothing wrong with the police also conducting investigations. But Uncle Ken, many people have welcomed the idea of a commission of inquiry, except that they are skeptical about the implementation of the recommendations. And I will not fault anybody who thinks along that line, because we've seen so many of the recommendations of so many commission of inquiries which are still gathering dust on our shelves. And so these are genuine concerns, regardless whichever quarters it's coming from.
Thank you very much. I would answer your question. In fact, the points I'm about to make dovetails exactly into the Commission of Inquiry. The first point I wish to make is that if Sam George says that he was shot or he was shot at, it is absolutely not true. Okay? We have all seen the videos of him right now, and there was no shooting in that video. The second point I wish to make is that you see people are confusing terms. They are talking about National Security Council. What Brandon Champon was talking about is National Security Secretariat and the high men.
Okay, so National Security Secretariat has the power to deploy men into elections.
They deploy men all the time.
I know what they do is to, coordinate with the police. And during elections, we know it is the police that is supposed to provide security during elections. And so if they picked intelligence, what they were supposed to do was to actually communicate with the police for them to deploy men.
Can I make a point?
Please do.
The National Security Secretariat hides all manner of people. The National Security Coordinator.
Okay, so who is Brian Champon?
I'm coming. He's the National Security Minister at
the
Office of the President.
Okay.
Now, the National Security Coordinator, he hides all manner of people.
But, so the National Security Coordinator...
he has the right to also arm them. In fact, I can name leading NDC bodyguards, people who guide President John Mahama, who used to guide President John Mahama, who are in the National Security outfit right now.
Okay.
I can name some. They have,
but were they part of the people deployed at the
I wouldn't know. Their faces were covered. Okay. And I was telling you that in 2016, I actually met a group of men dressed exactly same way, and it was an election.
Okay.
So people should not behave as if during elections some of these things don't happen. People, they are deployed. They were the people who were deployed like that and dressed like that. I can name the former Deputy Maslock. He was with them at that time. Okay, so this thing, the point I'm making here is that, yes, we may have set up a commission of inquiry. It does not mean that the police investigation is being brought to an end. People should get that clear. The police investigation will go on, okay, and the commission of inquiries work will also go on. And I'm surprised that leading politicians like Ashidun Ketia expressing a complete lack of faith in this type of commission. It is done all the time. You are telling me that if after 6 months, if the finding is made against somebody, the person has the right to go to court. They have that right.
So you think that with all the commissions we've seen, the WACO Commission, the ACHA Commission, the Ghana at 50, the Reconciliation Commission, all these ones that are gathering dust, you think people should still be confident in the outcome of this inquiry?
Otherwise, we should give up and just go home and sleep. People should have confidence.
But whose role is it to...
People should have confidence.
Whose role is it to implement all these recommendations we are talking about?
It is government.
Okay.
It is government.
So why are we here?
So sometimes some agencies. Okay. So we can call on various governments that there was this WACO commission.
Don't also forget that even though it's a constitutional mandate for the president to be able to set up such an inquiry, he still has the discretionary power after the commission has made its recommendation to say that I'm not going to implement. He must give his reasons to the public.
Would that be a lawful
he's
option?
left with his own discretion.
Will it be a lawful
option? If he gives a reasonable reason why he cannot implement,
it be a lawful option?
So would you fault people who think that no, because of historic antecedents, we don't believe in this commission of inquiry to be a solution to our problem?
Number one, nobody is telling the police to stop investigating. Let us get that clear. The police is continuing with the investigation.
But the lawyers have made it clear that, listen, when a commission of inquiry is doing its job, I mean, those people who are assisting the commission must be left to assist the commission to do that. Afterwards, if there are people who are not cooperating and the police think that they have criminal...
I would like to see whatever provision the lawyers, the so-called lawyers you are talking about are citing. I would like to see them.
Okay.
The point I'm making is that as we speak today, if a criminal allegation has been made to the police, and I believe that's what some judge want to do, if that is the case, the police have every right to follow whatever list they are following.
Okay.
So the two systems can work parallel. The commission can work, and then the police system too can work. I have no problem with that. If the police find a prima facie case where they believe that they can go to court against anybody, they can go to court. But the point that is being made, that these people were thugs. Because if Brian Champon says they were national security operatives, they were national security operatives. I find it very strange that anybody will sit here today and say that national security does not employ operatives. They employ them all the time and deploy them all the time for all manner of people.
For election purposes?
Oh, my sister, for election purposes. And you would be surprised.
I have covered elections for such a long time, and I know it is the police that is supposed to be providing security for elections.
You will be operating.
And the SWAT team. The SWAT team, are they supposed to be?
Aisha, would you let me speak?
Please
and you'll
on.
be operating under misconception.
Okay.
Because every single election that takes place in this country, including student elections, you have BNI operatives there. You don't know? They are there. Only you don't see them, but they are there, they are working.
Okay.
Okay. It's only this time a different decision was taken. Let us send a SWAT team in there.
And the men had masks on their faces.
And I'm saying that is not a strange thing, because I saw them in 2016. Personally.
Okay. And that makes it, I mean, acceptable?
No. Whether it is acceptable is a different argument altogether. As to arming men and covering their faces, it is done all the time.
Okay.
It is, and as to National Security Secretariat employing operatives and arming them in that manner, it is also done all the time. Okay, so for me, let us wait and see what the commission will bring. And I'm glad that you have people, the secretary to the commission, what is the name?
Kofi Abochi, we'll get to listen to him.
People are talking about his political allegiance. I don't know about Emil Short's political allegiance. I don't know about...
They've described all three as members of the NPP.
It's unfortunate. It's
well,
unfortunate. Let me quickly... It's unfortunate.
No, before you go to
it's unfortunate and it's also libelous. Because how do you go and tell Henrietta, what's the name?
Mensa
NPP member. It's undermines her credibility as a person. So for me, these are fine lawyers, fine gentlemen who have been given, gentlemen and ladies who have been given a great responsibility. Let us give them all the assistance that they can. The former commissioner of charge, a very high-rising judicial person, a very high-rising, high-running, also legal person, the person of Mr. Kofi, what's the name?
Kofi Abochi.
Yes, let's give them the opportunity. Let's give them the room to operate. The former Inspector General of Police. Let's give them the room to operate, and then let's just wait on the outcome. And let's stop all this undermining.
Okay, Kobe, just briefly, so I can bring it.
Orange
Evans
and apple are fruits.
Okay.
Both are plucked from trees.
Right.
But that is the extent to which you can do the comparison. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, National Security Secretariat may deploy 1 or 2 people, but they don't have to have a standing force. That is what we are talking about.
Who told you a standing force?
Masa, to the extent that the evidence, the prima facie evidence that there is a standing force is in the fact that they were wearing uniforms labeled as National Security. And mind you, it was not labeled as National Security Secretariat. It was labeled as National Security Council. Very important distinction. So, to come and tell us that they are from National Security Secretariat and not from National Security Council.
No, you were making a point. You were making a point.
Can you allow me to?
Security does not have a standing force. I'm saying that's a blatant lie.
But I'm saying it is
because they don't have. Musa Role, Mama's Musa works.
I'm saying National Security does not have a standing force.
You know, he's working there.
National Security does not have a standing
force.
They
have. Musa is working there. Mama's Musa is working there.
They rely on personnel from. No, they can even ask you to do something in the interest of national security. But that does not mean they have a standing force. Look, distinguish between having an operative to do an undercover job from that of a standing force.
Depending on any particular
what I know,
Maza, let's distinguish.
The national security is
let's distinguish between having an operative and having a standing force.
Okay.
Having operatives, yes, they do have operatives. National security has operatives.
Okay.
But
they employ them all the time.
Oh, Master,
so the point you made,
do you mind?
Can please allow
having a standing force? Having a standing force is a totally different thing.
Who told they were standing force?
So, but these are the men who are armed, and the national security minister came to own them.
For every particular
how would you describe them? How would you describe them?
Why are you now trying to create doubts?
How would you describe those
for
things?
that particular day?
Go for better briefing, bro.
Oh no. For that particular day, this is how the National Security outfit decided to deploy its men.
To cover their faces.
Yes. It's done all the time.
I know you are a lawyer. You've not been called to the bar yet.
I'm not a lawyer.
But you will soon be called to the bar.
I'm not a lawyer.
Have you ever seen any election grounds where people go there with covered faces?
I keep on telling you that in 2016 December 7th,
you saw
personally.
You saw them.
You know why I'm not disputing. You know why I'm not disputing that? Because he said he saw them, and I haven't seen them. I'm giving you the benefit of that. But the point is this: we have not seen that kind of violence.
Please allow Ken to make his point, and then I can come to Evans.
Al-Jabbar polling station. I mentioned the specific.
Over there, you saw men with covered faces.
Yes, but they were in the military. You know, the vehicle that the police were using. That vehicle is very similar, the same type of vehicle, but it's only military colors.
Okay.
I think
they didn't have, they weren't wearing national security coordination uniform.
It has Ghana Army on it.
It had Ghana Army.
These were in green.
Okay, so the difference is this one had SWAT on it,
but
and this one had Ghana Army.
And they had their faces covered.
Okay.
I think it's balaclava or something. Yeah, they put the balaclava.
Okay. That is the problem.
Okay, let me pick.
The problem is that we are comparing oranges.
No, you're not comparing.
Let me gauge Evans. We've made the point clear. We've made the point clear here, Evans. So I think that this is where the NDC's lamentations fit in. That we've seen so many commissions of inquiry in this country, and we've not seen the recommendations being implemented. And then again, I've heard security experts saying that in the absence of interim measures for such a commission of inquiry, for it to succeed, there must be interim measures that can calm people. Because if you look at the kind of public outcry this violence has received, there should be some interim measures. For instance, people are calling for the head of the IGP, the minister in charge of security at the presidency, and the national security minister to step aside for this commission to carry on their job. If something of that nature, if something of this nature is done, probably it can calm the nerves of people, for these people to have the peace of mind to do their job. I'm just looking at all of this in the absence of this, and in the circumstance we find ourselves in, what has become the status quo, that we do these commissions of inquiry and you never see the day of light. The recommendations are just packed somewhere and we don't see it being implemented. Would you fault anybody who says that I don't believe in this commission of inquiry?
The NDC has every justification to criticize the commission of inquiry for many, many reasons. And one for me is, can you read, you have the terms of reference, read the second term of reference for me.
That second term of reference, it
says something about identify the, locate and identify the people. Whilst you open that up.
So it says to identify any person responsible for or who has been involved in the events associated violence and injuries. And then C, to inquire into any matter which the commission considered incidental or reasonably related to the causes of the event.
Just a second one you read about identify. I mean, why is the president asking commission to identify people when his own minister of state, his own radio, has said that the people I deploy them? Yeah. I mean, so that's the thing that beats me. You have the guy, you've appointed a man.
He is in your office.
He's in your office. The man is on radio saying the people who went there in mask, I send them there. And then you set up a commission to identify them. It beats my mind.
Aisha, please allow Evans to make his point. When Evans is done, then you can also bring in your response.
Just a moment.
Okay.
You can't win. It's so unfortunate. You can't win. Because if the president were to get up today and call on Kandapa and Bernard Champon and the IGP to resign, we will be hearing exactly the same sentiments.
I don't think people are saying they should resign.
The same thing that he's saying.
I think that what people are calling for is for them to step aside so that
the point I'm making is that if the president were to get up today and say that, you hear people being dismissed, being transferred, being asked to go home. The same allegation of cover-up. This is a president.
What allegation of cover-up? If people are not doing their job well and you are firing them, who would accuse you of doing cover-up?
This is a president who is saying that I'm going to hold the public commission of inquiry.
Is it going to be public anyway?
Aisha can come and sit in the gallery
and watch proceedings.
Okay,
so Evans, make your point. Evans, make your point.
So my point. Brian Champon is on radio to have said the people who we saw assaulting an MP, assaulting people, shooting into a crowd and leaving sick people injured in the hospital, I deployed them. This individual is an appointee of the president.
Okay.
And the president then sets up a commission and says, identify the people. For me, it beats my imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, because if the president really is committed to this, and I have no indication that he is not.
Okay.
No,
but actions for me speaks better. The first action that he should have done once the guy had gone on radio and said, I deployed them, is for the president to, if not sack him, ask him to step aside.
Okay.
That for me would have been the first indication of a president who's really committed to getting to the bottom of this, either through the CID criminal probe or through a commission. You have this man who is still at the helm of affairs at national security. He's a very powerful man.
Yeah.
Minister of national security. He has the resources of the state still. at his disposal. And he has the police investigating his actions. Now he has the commission investigating his actions. If he's really in the wrong, what do you think he will be doing right now?
He can use his
exactly my
authority.
point. Exactly my point. I don't know, but because precisely I don't know. That's why you need to step aside. Step him aside. The president must first say, Brian Champo, if not for anything, you've admitted that you
deploy
your actions are a subject of investigation.
You are an interested party
in the matter.
Yeah.
I will be shocked if the commission finishes its work and never invite Brian Champo. I will be shocked. Clearly they will.
Yeah.
The findings will be very, very interesting.
Very interesting.
Okay.
I will be shocked.
We are in this country.
If the IGP...
Now the findings will be interesting. But you won't wait for the findings to come.
I'll be shocked if the IGP finishes its own probe, the police, the CID.
Please allow everyone.
And they do not question. And they do not. And they do not.
Please allow everyone to learn.
And they do not question. And they do not question. And if the IGP finishes its probe or the police finishes their probe, and they do not question Brian Champ, I will be shocked. But that second bit, I'll be shocked, but I won't be surprised if they do not. That is why I think he should step aside. Because if the police want to do a proper investigation into this, they should be interrogating Brian Champo. The reason why they will not is because the man is National Security Minister.
Yeah.
That is why the president needs to say to him, issue a statement saying Brian Champo suspended. But he did it to one of the Northern Regional Ministers, I think Northern Regional Minister, who, or is one of them, I've forgotten. But he asked him to step aside when some MPP groups stormed into a place, and I think he came to justify it. The president asked him to step aside, suspending him until the probe was done.
Even the Deputy Sports Minister,
exactly.
when allegations were made against him, he was asked to
that is what the president should have done to Brian Champo, to show his commitment beyond the commission.
Yeah.
Setting up the commission is good because of, for me, it's in the third and fourth terms of reference is good, because then you look into the bigger problem of vigilantism, violence, and elections, and then they propose a way forward.
The second and third.
You know, the third and the fourth. It's good. The related matters that you're going to look into it. However, that's why I started by saying the NDC has every justification.
Okay.
Because of what I just said. If the president has started before issuing the statement about commission, I've asked the man to step aside. Now let's go in there and look into what he's done. Then there's confidence.
Okay.
The NDC will struggle to fight it. But he's not done that. The man is still in the office.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what he's doing to the evidence. But thankfully, he's spoken publicly. So at least we have that to hold him to. Secondly, the reason why the NDC is justified to raise concerns, secondly, is because of the history of presidential commission of inquiries in this country. Over the years, we've seen commissions set up, probe matters, reports are issued, and nothing comes out of it. And the constitutional architecture for a commission itself is flawed. Why? Because eventually it is the executive president who has the final say
discretion
on what the commission produces.
Yeah.
In other words, the president...
White paper.
Exactly. The president will share white paper and choose and pick which of the recommendations to accept and which one he will not accept. And that is why I believe one of the things that, again, this president has missed an opportunity to do was, after doing this commission of inquiry, he should have gone and addressed the country or issue a statement in which he commits to implementing whatever recommendation that is made. I mean, so that we hold him to it. But he's not done that yet. And so, and again, we can only look to history. History
the
has taught
reason
us
you can't fault anyone for saying
exactly.
That,
the reason history has taught us that our presidents set up commissions. Look, a good example is the World Cup Commission of Inquiry, right? The NDC set it up. They did not implement it until they went. In fact, under their own administration, they still sent money in planes when the commission had finished and said, "Do not send money."
Yes.
Right. This president, this year, I think end of last year when we went for the media press, he was asked a question about the commission. He has no idea.
He has no
about
idea
the World Cup Commission. So it's gathering dust. And so that is why I believe the NDC has a justification to raise the concerns, legitimate concerns about this commission as well.
What will happen to the outcome of this?
All that I've said.
And how does it impact on justice for the victims?
Yeah, and that is why I believe that the police's inquiry. I mean, that's what I mean. I create a separation between the first two terms of reference and the last two. The last two, I think, is the most important. The first two, the police should do it because that's a criminal aspect. Identifying the people and punishing them. And you see, this commission of inquiry came a day after the IGP has, for the first time, issued a public statement telling us that they are expanding their probe into the Ayawaso by-elections and told us who the constitution of the committee, the police committee, looking into the matter. Okay. And I thought that was plausible. That was something you could applaud, right? And the next day, the president comes and says, I'm setting up a commission. Now, the IGP is appointed by the president. The commission is also appointed by the president. And the question about both of them are going to do the same work. Now, the SREM side was on my show and said, if he was a lawyer of any of the guys that the commission will be inviting, he will tell his client to go to the commission instead of going to the IGP.
Definitely, and we'll get to hear that explanation because there's been confusion over whether the two investigations can go on concurrently.
My question is, wouldn't it have been prudent, and I don't know this, I'm just this question, would it have been prudent for the president to wait for the IGP to finish its criminal probe, identify people, arrest them, charge them, once that is locked in, then you set up the commission.
Yeah, but if you do that, then you won't be covering for the people. And you want to cover for the people. Okay. You don't get it.
Okay, well, but mine was the question.
Yeah,
so,
but mine was the conclusion.
Yours the answer, so that's no problem.
So Ken wanted to make an intervention, Ken.
No, he's finished.
No, I'm not finished.
Okay, so a quick one, and then we'll get to listen to the explanations from lawyers as to whether these two people, the police and the Commission of Inquiry, can work concurrently. Ken.
You know, they call it Monday morning quarterbacking.
Okay.
After the game is over, you could have scored 10 goals or you could have scored 20 goals. It's over. Okay, so you can afford to say anything. I'm glad you're saying that because of the misbehavior of the president, the former president, with the football commission, the Brazil commission.
How did I know that he was going to try and score?
Because you misbehaved in time before when it came to commissions of inquiry. You cannot trust that this president will carry out the terms of the commission of inquiry when it is over. He will.
Okay. So you are assuring us on behalf of the president that he will.
We don't need an assurance.
We can hold you when it happens that he doesn't implement it.
We don't need an assurance. We need action. We need action. The action is there. The action is very simple.
Let me go on.
The man
I will be surprised.
Let Ken finish and then you
I will be surprised if any lawyer were to come here to say that because there was a police procedure going on, there should not be any commission of inquiry. The two can exist together.
But the lawyers are saying otherwise.
I'm saying that I'm surprised because the two can exist together. Yes. Why not?
A commission of inquiry.
This man is
two people investigating the same thing.
The jurisdiction, the ambit are different. The police are to investigate criminal acts if they have taken place.
Okay.
So it is for the police to pursue the charge brought by Mr. Sam George and any other person against individuals identified and not identified. Okay. The commission has a wider remit, including making recommendations for.
But you've just seen the terms of reference to identify people
inclusive.
Whose activities have led to this.
Yes,
Wouldn't that be overlapping with what the police is doing?
No. Okay. The two bodies can work together peacefully.
The two bodies can work together.
Yeah, they can work together. They can pursue their lines. They can pursue their lines. You see, and for me, I would have been glad. We know the police are working. We know the commission is working. If I were opposed to the president, I would have been very glad. I would have been gladdened by that scenario because when everything is over, I'll bring everything before me and examine them closely whether there has been consistency. You see,
between the two bodies.
Yes.
Well, so I think if we listen to the lawyers, then maybe we can just come to a conclusion on this matter. Because I'm still also struggling to understand why the two of them can work together.
With the issue of whether the president should have asked Mr. Brian Achampong to sit down or not to sit down. Okay. For me, it doesn't arise at all. The gentleman says that these people work in my secretariat. And we know that people like this are hired all the time by the National Security Outfit. I have given you a name. Somebody who used to work for President John Mahama.
Okay, so why shouldn't he be asked to step aside?
Oh, yes, I'm saying that legitimately. So it is for him to go before the commission and show his payroll and show why these people are there, the justification.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're not saying, nobody is saying that he should do, he cannot do that. Definitely, if the commission invites him, they would have to do that.
For anybody
but to still hold on to his position.
For anybody to sit on public
people are
television.
talking of conflict of interest.
No, for people to sit on public television and actually undermine the integrity of this gentleman, that he would mess with, he would try to undermine this commission. I cannot understand.
But they have every reason to be able to make that
but he has no power. He has no power to. This commission of inquiry is not going to be
someone who has power
security.
to deploy such people
to
go and cause this mayhem. He doesn't have power.
Let us not get confused. He has power.
Okay.
But he has no power to interfere with the work of this commission. This commission, I think, is like a high court.
Yes.
Do you know how serious it is to interfere with the work of the High Court?
Okay.
You can be jailed for that.
Sure. So let's
first of all, let's get something straight. Technically, theoretically, on paper, a police investigation can be ongoing.
So what are we talking about now? You admit the police.
Can you allow me?
Ken, please
it's a good concession. Go on.
Technically, theoretically, on paper, yes, a police investigation can be ongoing, just as the commission probe is also ongoing. But do you know the difficulty? The difficulty is that whatever testimony somebody gives before a commission cannot be used as evidence against him. So when by the police in a prosecution. So when a suspect or a person of interest decides to go to the commission of inquiry first to go and give testimony before coming to the police to come and give whatever evidence he has, in effect what he's telling you is that whatever I'm telling you, I've already told the commission, which means that you cannot use it against me. Yes, as slaps I'm judged, but I've already told the commission, so you cannot use it against me. That is what we are talking about.
Okay.
That is the difficulty that the lawyers are identifying and they are talking about.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
So before I come and confess to the crime, I have gone to the commission to go and confess to the same crime, which means that having come to you to come and confess to you, you cannot use it against me. Because
if a crime has been committed.
I think we should listen
no
to
crime has been committed. They are legitimate
weapons. Who is a law lecturer? Who is a law lecturer at GIMPA, and we'll also listen to Kofi Abuchi, who is secretary to this commission of inquiry. They have some explanations to make.
When I see the commission of inquiry and I saw the individuals, I was happy. But then when I look at the container, the commission of inquiry itself,
as prescribed by the constitution,
then I get worried. Why? A commission of inquiry, which is a legal, establishment. As we know, the first problem is that whatever recommendation the commission brings out is subject to what? The president's discretion. Whether to accept them, accept some of them, reject all of them, or accept or reject some. So therefore, at the end of the day, we still have to go back to the political, discretion.
So he's not bound
he's not.
To necessarily implement what comes to him by way of recommendation from the commission.
Exactly. Then, I don't know if you remember the Rekun Brobi, the Republic versus Rekun Brobi, the decision that came out.
Yeah.
At least that
is challenged at the appeals court.
The challenge, yeah. So what actually the jurisprudence on commission of inquiry is now is that persons who are, investigated are brought before the committee to testify as witnesses cannot be prosecuted because one way or the other, commission of inquiries, the jurisprudence is to look at problems and then try to solve it in a more elaborate manner than to pick individuals and prosecute them. Then the question is, if you invite someone as a witness and he says something, how then do you use his testimony to later prosecute him? Now, if you look at the second term of reference of the commission. It says that we should find persons...
Identify persons responsible for or who has been involved in the events associated with violence and injuries.
So, obviously, the persons who are responsible or who may be found responsible for this are likely to be persons who, if the commission was not there,
could have been prosecuted. Using the criminal
procedure. So the ultimate effect is that it is likely, looking at what has been happening, that the persons who may be identified per second, term of reference may not be punished, and that is where
may not be criminally
prosecuted, and if found guilty, punished.
Why? Because of the ruling on the back of the Ghana 50 thing.
Now, with this process, obviously, we are not going to see prosecutions to punish people.
So you don't see that happening here?
I honestly don't see that happening after the commission.
There is nothing in our law that says that when the Commission of Inquiry investigates a matter, that matter is completely precluded from becoming the subject of a criminal proceeding. What the court said, and again, it's useful for us to know that the court that decided this was the High Court. And so while the President stands in the meantime, it is not a finality of our laws in the circumstance. But what the court said in that case was that where a person appears before a commission, and in the particular case, the CI specifically said witnesses have immunity in respect to the things they testified on. Now, where a witness has been granted immunity from prosecution in respect to the testimony he gives before a commission, you cannot use the same testimony or the same evidence before a court of law. In the context of what we have today, even though witnesses enjoy the same degree of constitutional immunity, the CI does not specifically grant immunity. But what may actually happen in our case is that where a witness appears and gives testimony, while you can't use that testimony in court, the police can conduct their parallel investigation, and that parallel investigation, if they're able to secure evidence which is outside of the testimony given before the commission, that evidence could be the subject of criminal prosecution.
So we've had explanations from two lawyers there. Kobe.
Basically, Kofi Abuchi.
Can please allow Kobe to make
Basically, Kofi Abuchi was agreeing with the first lawyer. What it means is that a testimony given by a witness cannot be used against him for criminal prosecution.
Yeah.
But then he is going forward to say that the police can do other investigations that will establish without that testimony. But at the end of the day, the person is going to say that it is based on my testimony. That is what you are bringing the criminal action against me. And it is because I have given that testimony which has now exposed me to this. And so I'm covered by the immunity granted under the Commission of Inquiry statute.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That is the point we are making. Okay. That is why we are saying that, look, to the extent that we need to gather facts to help us formulate policy, yes, it's good that we establish committee, but let's leave the criminal aspect of it, identifying the perpetrators and punishing them, how do you call it, prosecuting them and getting the court to punish them, to the police to do proper investigation to do. You understand? That is what we are talking about. Okay. But using a commission of inquiry to whitewash the whole process, and therefore people will only continue to do, how do you call it, the self-impunity. And so people will feel emboldened and continue to do worse, because at the end of the day, the system will find a way of clearing me.
Okay, Uncle Ken.
You see, this whole very speculative long jumping is very unfortunate. He's working under the assumption that somebody will come and sit at the commission and confess to crimes. And that once he confesses to crimes, the police cannot use that evidence of a confession against him in the criminal proceedings. Okay. It's a very long, speculative jump.
Okay.
It is not. The minister has already owned up to that crime.
The minister did not own up to a crime. He said, these are my legitimate boys.
Okay.
And he has every right to say that.
Okay, Uncle Ken, please make your point.
I'm making my point. Okay. I mean, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay.
That these people were legitimately employed and that they were legitimately deployed.
Okay.
Unless we have evidence to the contrary, and so far I've not heard any evidence to the contrary. You are working under the assumption that these people are not employed, they are not national security officers.
Okay.
If you get that evidence, bring it.
No, I'm working on the assumption that the national security is
so
not
my understanding of the explanation is that the commission, you cannot use the evidence gathered by the Commission of Inquiry to start a criminal procedure.
You see, if somebody comes before the commission and makes a statement, a particular conversion statement, it's assumed to be privileged. Okay, you cannot come and pick that as a basis for criminal prosecution. And I'm saying that to make that assumption is a very long jump.
Okay.
First and foremost, nobody has come there to do that.
Yes, and I mean, for all the discussions we are having, because the commission hasn't even started its work, but people are making these based on previous...
And the point I'm making is that it's a very long jump.
Okay.
Let us wait for the commission to start work. Let the police pursue any criminal investigation if there is one. So let the two systems move. But that should not be used as a basis to rationalize why the commission should not have been set up. That's an unreasonable thing to say, that the commission should not have been set up because there's a police investigation. There are two separate processes. One leading to the prosecution of criminals, if they are criminals, and one leading to the identification of people who committed crimes. So that, and the other point that was being made, that this thing is a political process. After the process is over, the president has a right to comment on it, the white paper, blah, 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 blah. That is a matter of law. It is the 1992 Constitution. Akufo-Addo did not write the 1992 Constitution.
Having listened to the explanation of the two lawyers, and having also looked at the term of references, with the last one saying that submit report within 1 month and give reasons for its findings, and also give appropriate sanctions, if any. And then the fact remains, why bring in the Commission of Inquiry if the criminal justice system can address this issue? I've heard people talk about cost involved. If the police can do an investigation and unravel people who have committed crimes and punish them, then why do we need a Commission of Inquiry, Evans?
I mean, so I'm not a lawyer, so I struggle to answer. I struggle to answer the legal question. I just use a common sense approach, which is that if it's criminal, I rather prefer the criminal agencies do the investigation. So we have the Criminal Investigation Department. That's what they're attached to do, especially when the IGP has said that they are doing exactly that, and has issued a statement to tell us that they're even expanding that probe. They've questioned about 16 people already. I thought that was a way to go, because the Commission of Inquiry is a good one, except that it will be limited in its ability. They would need, none of these guys on the committee have any expertise in forensics or forensic investigation. They will definitely, I believe, rely on other agencies to do that for them. And I'm thinking they will rely on the police to do that for them. And so if that is going to be the case, then why don't you simply then leave the police to do that work? Because that's what they're doing anyway. That will lead directly into to prosecution. Okay. And so that's where I stand on that question.
Okay. Now, there are issues that have also been raised by security experts, and I had Dr. Kwesi Enin say that the 1 month period given to them is such a short time, and he talked about how they need to take pertinent issues into consideration and also do proper forensics. And he thinks that the 1 month period is very short for this assignment.
It's too short, 1 month. And I assume what will happen is at the end of the 1 month, they'll ask for an extension or before it ends, because 1 month, I think the identification bit is very simple. That one, there's so many videos. The man has come to say that, I think that one is simple and straightforward, really. Okay. All you need to do is to pull by champion into a room and say, bring your men. I mean, it's as simple as that. Watch the videos and say, this guy, this guy, this guy. I mean, and I think that should be as simple as ABCD. Except...
And the police couldn't have done that.
That's the point, right? The police, and NDC said they've even identified some of them. In fact, I'm told the lawyer for Sam Joseph went to the police and they gave him a statement. He mentioned names of those who slapped him. The guy who slapped him, we know him. Yeah. We saw him in the video. I mean, and he's known to the MPP, I'm told, is a well-known guy. I'm sure one of the MPP executives was on Asempa saying that.
They say he's a member of the disabled
exactly.
force.
And so a lot of these people are known. For me, that is a very simple matter, really. That shouldn't take much. I think the bigger one is the third and fourth. That is going to introduce a big challenge because they will necessarily have to go into other incidents in the past. Yeah. And that then NDC have already told us that they no longer have any interest.
And that is why the security analysts are making a certain point we shouldn't lose sight of. And they say the convening authority should have explicitly outlined the scope of this inquiry. They did not, if for instance, if you say inquire into any matter which the commission considers incidental or reasonably related to the causes of the event, that is such a wide scope and is also they think is
my
worrisome.
point to that very briefly is that gives the commission the power to set the scope themselves.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm sure the first thing they will do when they sit is to flesh that out in terms of specifically what is it that will look like for us, and then they will then lay that out and then use that to probe. And so I don't see any problem with that. I mean, the president could have done that, but they've left it to the commission to decide. It's very broad. They have to now set the parameters of what is related and what is incidental. I think that shouldn't be a problem.
So my point is that some of these issues that are being raised by experts, we should take them serious, because don't forget the fact that the outcome of this recommendation, whether we like it or of this inquiry, whether we like it or not, will actually position us whether properly or not properly for the 2020 elections.
Well, is directed at me?
Yes.
Yes. Ken. Well, first and foremost, you just put Brian Champon into a room and
it's a simple matter.
It's not a simple matter.
Why is not?
It's not a simple matter. You see, first and foremost, these guys have legitimate reason to be there. You need to establish that.
Okay.
Did they have a legitimate reason? That will need to be established. Okay. Was Sam George assaulted?
I think the Commission of Inquiry will look into all of that. But let's look at some of the issues that are being raised. And I think they're very cogent expertise that we shouldn't lose sight of.
About the scope?
The scope, the time frame for this work,
well,
and looking at the bigger picture.
As Ivan said, with the scope, the commission itself will define the scope. And I would like them to, because see, apart from the videos of Sam George, you've also seen other videos. Have you seen the NDC National Security guy?
No, I haven't.
You've not seen the NDC National Security guy. This guy was also beaten. He was in hospital. He was also interviewed and said he was brought there by the NDC National Security to come and do something there. So all manner of things have happened. I would hope that they would create a very wide ambit. Which for me will lead to the issue about the time. I think that it's quite clear that maybe going forward.
Want them to go to Talent and Tripoli as well?
I don't think so. I don't think it's. Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish.
The hostess was inviting me.
Let me just. I thought he was done because he was.
I was on my feet. Yes. For me, you see, going forward, whenever there is a next election.
On your feet.
Whenever there is another election, it's for the political actors and the electoral commission and everybody who is involved intimately to sit around the table and decide that this is the role the police is going to play, this is the role the political parties are going to play, this is how observers are going to be identified. All that goes into ensuring security at the police station and within the vicinity of the police station to come to one concise position before the day. If you leave certain loose ends, what has happened is going to happen. But to conclude, for me, Mr. Brian Champon has said it, and it is quite clear that these were legitimate police officers or legitimate officers of the national security.
They're not police officers.
Well,
the police people say they know.
Yes, legitimate officers from National Security Secretariat, and I'm sure that when the day comes, we'll come to give the appropriate evidence.
Kobe, just make your point.
What makes something legitimate? Is it because today I am appointed a minister and I have decided to I'm appointed a minister in charge of national security, and I have decided to call my friends from Mamprobi Choko
to invite Musa.
Please allow him to make his point. He didn't interfere when you were making your point. Please allow him.
To call my friends from Mamprobi Choko, Koligono, and say, okay, you know what, I now have power, so you are under national security, which I am the minister of, and therefore it becomes legitimate. Is that what you are?
Yes.
Oh.
Can please allow him to make his point so we can move on?
You understand?
Yeah.
And that is what.
Can please allow him. Let him finish.
I don't like to interrupt. I don't like to
make your point. No, this time I will not allow it. No. I won't allow it. Please make your point. We are running out of time.
We go a long way back, so you understand?
Yeah.
That is what I say, that that is what the commission is going to investigate, I am all for.
Okay.
That is the third and fourth leg of this thing. But we are saying that by looking into that, should not be used as a subterfuge to therefore preclude people from being investigated criminally and being prosecuted. Yeah. And that is what appears to be the agenda when you read the first and second terms of reference. Clearly, the need to find the truth as to whether the force was legitimate in itself, whether it has to be in existence and all that, whether they should even be deployed on an election day, assuming that we even need them, are they necessary for election day, especially on a by-election? Yeah. Are all those things really necessary? The fact that we need to establish those things should not be used as a subterfuge to cover up and therefore prevent people who have misused their authority from being prosecuted. That is the point we are making. Okay. You understand? So when we said all that, nobody is saying that a commission to investigate why violence had been in attendance at our by-elections is not necessary. That is not the point. We are saying that when you use that legitimate quest to now obfuscate the issues and therefore try to throw dust in the eyes of the people, that is what we are talking about. Okay, so we say that, look, it's not too late. They should go and do the proper thing. Let the commission look into the general matters that will lead to policy formulation and other things. And let the police continue with their criminal investigation. That has nothing to do with the commission.
Okay, so we all agree that the commission of inquiry is necessary, especially going into 2020. Commission of inquiry, but the police must also be allowed to do the criminal investigation. Now, having agreed that we find ourselves in a critical moment because we are warming up for a bigger election in 2020, can there ever be an election free from political vigilantism? Now, listen to a security and conflict resolution expert on this.
Whereas we are referred to as a beacon of democracy in Africa, we have created demons, and those demons could devour us. Those monsters that we have created, we are calling vigilante groups, have the potential to create an environment in which all of us would be so much threatened. And that is why it is not just about looking at the threat, but its potential impact and how do we prevent that threat. Okay. So we agree vigilantism now is a threat. We agree its potential impact from the Awayasu Wagon West by-election. But what measures do we take to ensure it doesn't happen? And because we know the mindset and what emboldens them and gives them that courage to continue to do what they are doing, that we needed as a country to identify that these groups are totally out of order. They should not exist in our political parties, and we then take the steps to do that. Interestingly, we had started in November 2016. The UN, both at the country level and the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel, where I have worked, were the ones who supported the National Peace Council. And in Moving Peak Hotel, all our party leaders at the top level signed a commitment of declaration to disband vigilante groups.
Although they didn't do it.
That was one of the very important steps before the December elections. Yeah. You know what has surprised me throughout these 2 years? The National Peace Council refuses to take that document, go to the parties and say, look, you are the ones who signed this. Yeah. Why are you continuing to have vigilante groups?
Never come up.
Okay, so you heard from Mr. Bombande. He was speaking with Evans Mensah on PM Express. Now,
do you know that day I had a very good laugh.
You had a very good laugh.
Very, very good laugh.
Why?
Because there is a public proclamation by Kennedy Japan that in the 2016, in the run-up to the 2016 election, the Vigilante boys actually that the MPP had actually went to Kandapa for money. And Kandapa said he is not going to fund any such thing, and for which reason he was calling for Kandapa to resign. Now today, those boys have fought for ND, and so,
okay, so
what it tells you is that the leadership went and signed those documents. Yet on the ground, you have people like Japan who are funding that same vigilante groups. You've seen that video, haven't you? Evans, you have seen that video, haven't you?
Of Kennedy Japan speaking,
yes.
Kobe, it's obvious.
So I had a very good laugh.
It's not obvious that the two political parties are taking us for a ride.
And
they don't trust each other. The two political parties don't trust each other.
You have no evidence of the NDC doing any such thing.
Oh, but people will refer you to Talency and all of that.
No, but see, that is the problem I have.
The point we are making is that.
That is the problem I have. Look, when Jainfo Red went to a polling station in Tamale during registration of voters and fired, and the court remanded him into custody, the then regional minister went to the prisons at night and caused him to be released. And the minister had no power of pardon. You understand? Unlike in a situation where a president will say, okay, you have served part of your sentence and therefore I'm pardoning you and that kind of thing. This minister had, but wait.
But the issue remains
I'm coming. I want to establish that thing. When we are mixing the thing, in Talency, yes, there was a misbehavior. And I've seen a video of somebody supposedly supposed to be a national security operative shooting. He was not in any uniform. As to whether he was indeed a national security operative or not, we didn't even know. You understand?
Yeah.
And that person, to my knowledge, has not been apprehended to this day. Okay. But because the NDC...
Who was in power?
I'm coming there. Because the NDC was then in power, people are legitimately allowed.
And was that a bloody election?
And allow Kobe to make it funny. Otherwise, it won't make progress.
People are allowed legitimately to link it to the NDC, and because someone can say you failed to identify the person. And but in this instance, we are having people who a minister of state has owned up to say, I deployed them.
I agree with you, Kobe. But if you listen to Bombande, we are now addressing the bigger picture of vigilantism.
But I'm saying
and if you listen to what he said, and even if you listen to Dr. Ainin, he says Ayawaso was something that has been fueled for the past few years. And why are we here? Because this one says, this one did to me, I will retaliate. This one did to me and I'll retaliate. And the cycle goes on.
But I'm saying
that is why we need to address vigilantism as a whole.
Why we need to address all those concerns, I'm saying in this particular instance, we have escalated the thing from party boys who are clashing with each other, regrettable and condemnable, and something that must be stopped at all by all means. Yes, but we have lifted the game from that level to state-sponsored terrorism at police stations.
We understand that. We've established that fact. That the minister
we must not try to equate the two. However condemnable the party boys, vigilantes, and all that is, it's not the same as state-sponsored terrorism.
Okay. Evans, have we come to the point where the electorate should boycott elections? Because it's obvious the reason, because I ask myself that why would political parties, bring up these groups and sponsor them to go and protect ballot boxes? If we have a good electoral process or a very good electoral system, why would people need such people to come and protect ballot boxes? Has it gotten to the point that we should also let the political parties, and by this I'm talking about the two major political parties, the NDC and the NPP, that we are boycotting elections, we will not vote for you. So go and vote for yourselves and do whatever you want to.
I think we're at a point where something drastic must happen. I don't know what the form that drastic measure will be, but something really drastic must happen. And both political parties are equally responsible for where we are. NDC and the MPP should be really ashamed of themselves. And the thing about it is, these are adults, right, leading a political party and cannot find a common ground. And I was making a point last Friday that they won't fight in their homes. But when they get onto the political scene, they behave as if we are at war. Talengsi, Tripoli, Atiwa, Ayawaso. These are adults leading a political party, and they are campaigning for people to simply cast their ballots for them.
And people are trying to cry.
I mean, and it makes me wonder. And if you can look at the caliber of people who lead the NDC and MPP, these are reasonable people in their homes.
And they have a good following.
They have exactly. They have.
When people decided to try to cry, what happens?
And so it beats my imagination. NDC is equally liable for this. MPP is equally liable for this. However, because this government, NPP, promised us change, and we voted for them, right? You cannot help but look at what they're doing and feel very disappointed. I'm saying this because, and listen, we kicked the NDC out because of some of these things. Yeah. So when you come in 2016, we expect that you run a very mature government campaign. Everything has to be different.
Yeah.
On Friday, something happened. This letter from the Upper East Regional Coordinating Council that was leaked, where the Upper East Regional Security Liaison Office has written to MPP chairman in the region, I think Upper East or Upper West, have written to MPP chairman in the Upper West, asking them to put forward a list of 10 people, party activists, to be trained as election security team to guard ballot boxes in the 2020 elections, among other things, to guard ballot boxes in 2020 elections. Now, that is totally unacceptable. This is happening under this government, right? They're using official state agencies, like the Regional Coordinating Council, which must be there for everybody, regardless of your political color, to recruit party activists and train them in security to guard the elections
with state resources.
To guard the election for the MPP. And then so when we got the letter, we decided to call this man, who is the Upper West Regional Security Liaison Officer, who authored the document, and copied it to the regional minister and others. And we posed as one of those regional chairmen that he's written to, and find out, oh, so we want to send more. We said, oh yeah, you can bring more men apart from the 10. And then we asked, so what would they be doing? They started listing them. They'll be monitoring the elections, the registration, whatever, and then they will also be be guarding ballot boxes. And he said something that was very fascinating. He says, we want to train them so that when the police, somebody's stealing ballot box and the police is not doing anything, what would they do? And then he says that they don't need weak people, they need people who are courageous. Some people who, when you shout, they will not run away.
They will shout back.
I mean, and I'm like, this is wrong. And it shouldn't,
time.
Under MPP, under this president, a human rights activist, this shouldn't be happening.
This shouldn't be happening.
But this is happening.
I mean, whether we like it or
this
not,
is not in isolation. Do you remember recently?
We are running out of time, so I'm just giving you 2 minutes each to just wrap up.
You remember
the two of you? I'm giving you 2 minutes each to wrap up.
You remember the incident at Kaswa where some illegal military training camp was uncovered recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Your expectation of the Commission of Inquiry, we need to wrap up.
Then you tie that into the supposed military training that is being given to MMDCs and all that.
Briefly.
So it tells you that this government knows its plan.
So briefly,
they are militarizing the system so that they, and so when somebody says that, look, don't push me, don't think that because today you have control over state power, you have monopoly over any such destructive powers. No. You understand? Okay. And the Christian Council and all other well-meaning people must start speaking up right now before this thing blows up in our faces. My expectation of 2020 is that I expect that the international community will take an interest in 2020 and not assume that our elections have matured over the period. In fact, we are at the precipice as it stands right now, and they must take an interest and be present in this country in the run-up to the 2020 elections.
Uncle Ken, just briefly, your expectation of the Commission of Inquiry.
I could have gone down the same path that is taking and asked about the Sofo Azokes, who are actual party officials belonging to some other political party, and said, well, you see,
you expect please allow him to land. Allow him to land because the time
he leads one of the biggest groups of tax in this country.
It is not true.
Okay, so your expectation of the commission of inquiry.
You see, let me go straight to the troubles that we are having with elections.
Briefly.
I think that the politicians in this country should take a conscious step to step back from a very unfortunate situation of grooming these young, impressionable people, because there's evidence that NDC brought these people there. There's clear evidence. We should take a conscious decision that what we want is to win political power to improve the lot of the people of this country, both NPP and NDC, and decide not to exploit.
I want to thank you, gentlemen. I'm really grateful for your time. Kobe Fiagbe is managing editor of the Ghanaian Lens. Ken Kranche is the publisher of the Daily Searchlight. Evans Mensah is editor, joint news, and head of the political desk. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and thank you at home for watching us. Many thanks for watching. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Good evening.